Over the past few decades, there have been many devastations that have left hundreds of thousands of people without power. From snowstorms to earthquakes and hurricanes, the power has run out. Although these moments may not occur everywhere or frequently, the power will run out again, and we will need a solution to provide us with the power in order to survive. The solution is to make our own electricity. Today I will be demonstrating how energy is transformed through the technology of a pedal power generator and how it can make a huge impact towards both our social and environmental issues. There have been many different videos out on YouTube and on the internet as to how to build a pedal power generator. Some of the generators used a DC motor and some used an AC motor. Today I have with me a generator which uses an AC motor. Now first let me start off by roughly explaining the difference between both types of motors. A DC motor contains two permanent magnets which are fixed in place and form the outside of a motor called the stator, while a coil of wire carrying the electric current called the rotor forms around the motor. The magnetic fields come from the stator while feeding electrical power to the coil that makes up the motor. This interaction between the stator and the rotor allows the motor to spin and produce energy. As for in an AC motor, there are no permanent magnets. The motor contains a field of electromagnets that make up the stator, as well as a few coils of wire and metal plates. With AC motors, however, power is required in order to produce power. This is simply because the motor is made up of some coiled wire and metal plates that can't produce any power without a proper charge. However, with power being sent into the motor, the coils are energized, hence producing a magnetic field that rotates to produce power. I will now explain and demonstrate how exactly power has been made and transformed within this generator here. In this project, a 21-speed bicycle has been hooked up to a Bosch AL8708 alternator, a 350 cranking arm assisted Motormaster Eliminator lawn battery, and a 750 watt Motormaster Eliminator inverter by a few alligator clips and a serpentine belt in order to create energy. In this pedal power generator technology, mechanical energy is transferred into electrical energy. I will first explain how this generator was built. Alright, so here's a quick look at my first attempt on a pedal powered bike generator. We'll start off at the top where we have our switch that's connected to our alternator. So once this switch is turned on, power will be sent through the alternator and directly into the battery. So this is when the battery is being charged, and we have our inverter which is connected to the battery and a few appliances that we will be testing out. Alright, so here's a quick look at our wiring of this entire circuit. We have our B+ terminal right here, which has two cables coming out from it. We have one black cable from the switch and one yellow cable that goes directly to the positive terminal of the battery. On the side of the alternator here we have two cables coming out. One is from the L terminal, which leads to the switch as well, and we have one cable from the S terminal which directly goes to the positive end of the battery. So now I'll show you the wiring on the other side of the alternator. We have three ground cables from the negative end of the battery to the casing of the alternator, and we have the inverter here which is directly connected to the battery. We have some appliances connected to the inverter, and we will be testing those once you get the bike running. Right now the voltmeter is set at 12.12 volts. You will see this voltmeter rise quite rapidly once we get the bike running. So how does this generator work? As you pedal, the rear wheel begins to spin and picks up speed. The wheel is connected to the pulley of the alternator, which will also spin once the rear wheel is in motion. Because the alternator needs a lot of power in order to produce power, the gear ratio between the wheel and the pulley must be very large in order to supply the power. By calculating the number of times the wheel spins per one rotation of the crank, and the number of times the pulley spins per one rotation of the wheel, I was then able to calculate the gear ratio. As one rotation of the crank spins the wheel 4 times, and one rotation of the wheel spins the pulley 10 times, the gear ratio could then be determined by multiplying these two numbers. Therefore, the gear ratio is 40:1, which is very large and what is required to produce the power we need. Now, to calculate the amount of RPM the alternator is providing, we multiply the gear ratio by the RPM of the rider. I personally average an RPM of approximately 95 on this specific bike, So the RPM of the alternator will be 40 times 95, which gives me a total of 3,800 RPM. So back to how the generator works. As I pedal and the alternator spins at a very fast pace, electromagnetic waves are forming and rotating rapidly within the motor, hence providing power. A pedal-powered generator can provide a highly effective impact towards both our social framework and environment. With this technology, you are able to enjoy cycling at home during days with bad weather outside and train for events. As you use this generator, you are able to promote health by exercising and keeping fit. This technology can also promote and encourage more people to cycle and stay active while being able to make energy. Not only does this provide you with a method of indoor cycling, but every time you pedal, you are constantly contributing to saving the environment. This is because as you pedal, you are providing power to the alternator, which charges the battery, allowing you to power various appliances instead of using the AC outlets in your homes. The generator is a renewable energy source that is 100% emission-free and completely clean. This technology will be most beneficial when there is a power outage, because you will then be able to produce your own electricity and not have to rely on the power to return. Some pros and cons of this generator. Pros are that it can be used during power outages and as a backup power supply. It's a great way to stay fit and a good science fair or learning activity. Some cons, however, are that it's not very energy sufficient. A man can only produce so much power, and we do not have enough strength to keep the generator running, and it is not very cheap, so you can't really save too much money from this. In conclusion, this generator transforms mechanical energy to electrical energy through the pedaling motion of the bike wheel to the pulley of the alternator. And through the use of the inverter, the direct current is transformed into alternating current so that we can then power various appliances.